Hey guys, so I finally put on the head strap and I'm wearing it with this baseball cap so it doesn't look too goofy. And we're gonna see what it looks like. Just want to try it out for a bit. It might be a little hard to mount, but you'll just have to bear with me when we do this. Well, actually, you probably just won't see my face when I do this. I'll just start with it mounted because I can press the button to start the video. So I want to get a feel for like what the angles are, what kind of background stuff I'm picking up, and yeah, other than that, it feels secure. I don't feel like it's gonna fall off my head or anything. I probably look kind of goofy, and I assume it's still working. So this is camp. I've shown you a lot of it already. Oh, get a good stretch in. Some really beautiful stuff. Wonder we can experiment with letting you look through the, because I know where the lens is, so we can let you see through the binoculars. It's kind of difficult for me with my glasses, but let's see. I also don't know if I know how to use these completely. There's a way to change the zoom as well as the focus. So I have to like, take my glasses off apparently. Okay. These things are like all over the place trying to look through this. I really can't see through them. I have to hold them away from my face a little bit. Alright, that's better. Now, how do I change the zoom? I think that I guess just the focus does that. So I was looking, like, let's say I was looking. Yeah, these binoculars go really far. I'm not going to mess with that much more right now because you guys can't see through them. But they're pretty cool. I borrowed them from my dad. They're hunting binoculars and he said they're expensive. Trying to charge stuff. Trying to charge my watch. The solar panel does better than all this stuff, so it'll stay tip top after I'm done. My phone is taking forever. I'm charging like the GoPro batteries, backup battery bank. Watch is still charging. I want everything fully charged frequently. So I want to see what this angle is like. I think I might have got some hair in here, which really sucks. But we're gonna live with it. So the idea is like I could have Winchester in my right hand, and if I wanted to read or something, we could do that. We could be like, my father's earliest image of his mother is of a tall girl running back and forth over a bridge that spans a small creek. On one side of the creek is an indigenous settlement. The girl lives there in her father's house. Her grown brothers live in additions built on to the main house. This in itself is unusual because her people are matrilineal. That is, the males go to the homes of their wives when they marry. The women bring their mates to the house of their mothers. Property, such as it is, passes through the hands of the maternal line, but not here. So we could do something like that, or we could do a time-lapse video while I'm walking. Got some kind of locust or bee swarming me. It's hot. Hopefully it doesn't melt the plastic. I don't think it will. So yeah. I'll probably use the stand instead for right now and set the chair up. Somewhere where shade would be nicer, but there's nowhere with shade with a backdrop like this, so I'm kind of in the shade right now, but it got hot. I mean, it was cold this morning, like I had to put on a third layer, and by now that it's 11 o'clock, it's 70 degrees, but it probably feels hotter because the sun is beating right on me. Feels like 72. I don't know. I don't know why I'm so hot. So we will call that here. Nazaria Romero is the last child of an old man. She has no sisters. Her mother died shortly after giving birth to Nazaria. The only women she sees are the wives of her brothers. When my father dies, she wonders, will my brothers go to live with the families of their wives? Even now, she, at the age of 12, is her father's keeper. So, Cordova is writing about Taos, which is really close to where I am. I'm in Capilla Peak, kind of in central New Mexico. And tomorrow I'm going to move to Rihanna Abiquiu, Abiquiu Lake. And it's another National Parks campground. And it puts me in between the two major mountain ranges in northern New Mexico. Anyway, we'll be able to visit the locations that Cordova, sorry, that Cordova is describing in the book how it is. She's describing the racism that her father experienced in that area from the indigenous, being an indigenous person. She writes about the different experiences of her father and her father's sibling. I guess maybe the first thing we should say is that Cordova wrote these things, but she didn't put this book together herself. It was compiled by her friends and colleagues about 5 years after she passed away. And she never published a book other than this, so she just published kind of these fragments, and they tried to organize it into a comprehensive overview of her way of relating indigenous philosophy and religion to the Western philosophical canon. One of the things they mention is that Cordova wouldn't stay at the same university for more than 3 years because she felt like it had a sort of corrosive influence to get stuck in the trappings of that particular institution's way of bureaucratizing the daily tasks and goals, and it kind of misses the point of philosophy. It misses the point of indigenous living. So that's, again, that's one benefit of the camping experience and doing this wall camping, is that we get kind of close to the ground with a perspective of what Cordova and her ancestors are living and talking about. One of the things she says is that the rain is sacred, and it is not more or less sacred than the corn because it creates the corn that nourishes our body. So she compares the sort of way of reducing the sacred to just God in the Western tradition versus indigenous perspectives of accepting basically any aspect or new dimension of reality that brings people closer to religious experience or the sacred or the divine. Cordova comes at the end of my 1304 World Religions course. So by this point, we've already covered, in the first section, we covered Nancy, Bergson, Deleuze, and Emerson. Lots of different perspectives on religious experience, intuition, and metaphysics, and metaethics. And in Unit 2, we covered some sort of Eastern eminent religions like Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, basically starting with Hinduism, Jainism, and going from the Vedic tradition out into Confucianism, Taoism, and Shinto. And also Sikhism, which is much more recent, but it's an eminent religion, even though it's monotheistic. I'm not sure that any of the other religions are monotheistic in that unit, and this should all be, unless you're coming from outside the course, you should already know all this stuff, but we were just recapping to connect the dots and create some cross analyses. So, I didn't grab the dead cats, but I'm wondering if I need one. I'm sure I'm picking up mic levels. It is connected, so that's probably fine. I just won't be able to hear it. Sometimes I can't hear it on the GoPro. I think it has to process the audio or something. Maybe in a bit. Okay. And then in Unit 3, we covered the monotheistic Abrahamic traditions. That would be like, to kind of segue, we start with Western polytheisms, Egyptian polytheism, Nordic polytheism, Greek polytheism, looking at the comparisons across them and the similarities as well. Basically going back to an Indo-European religion that is indicated by commonalities in languages between the European languages and the Indian languages, between the Vedic, Sanskrit stuff, and then like the Latin, Greek, Hebrew. All of these have a lot of similarities in them. And so on that note, we also spend some time looking at the transition from a Yahwism, which is polytheistic Judaism, before the kind of transition with Moses into worshiping a single God. You still had a lot of idols, and we move away from, as Nancy shows us, we move away from something like God's having places to God being the metaphysical preeminence of being, as Nancy puts it, meaning the sort of the one, the absolute, the ultimate truth, spirit, as well as an agent and a person that guarantees consciousness, guarantees subjectivity, guarantees the logic of the world. And Nancy tells us we may not have those things. And as we consider these other religions, they don't always have those. But the Jewish people enter into this covenant with their God, Yahweh, and you're not supposed to say Yahweh. Jesus, in Christianity, his real name is Yeshua. Anyway, or like Joshua. Josh saved your soul. But good guy, Josh. So to get to this point in the world religions course where we're thinking about Cordova, we've covered, like I said, intuition, metaphysics, Deleuze on a life, Emerson on religious anarchism and being able to experience God yourself firsthand, Christianity as a starting point, Nancy, divine places on kind of, I guess you'd say like a postmodern, not deconstruction, but multiplicity of divinity, as well as the impacts of modernity and scientific knowledge on how we conceive of God and what space is left for God to occupy. All right. And then, of course, you do the traditional kind of canon of world religions, like I've said, with units 2 and 3. 3 ends after Judaism, we go to Christianity. We work with Islam a bit, obviously. Those are the main 5 in the course, because that's what's in the course catalog, at least but not limited to Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It's worth always mentioning that Buddhism does not take a stance on theism or atheism. You can be a Buddhist and a Christian, you could be a Buddhist and a Muslim, or you could be Jewish and Buddhist. You can also, when it comes to Judaism, you can be a statist, like a Zionist, or you can be an atheistic Jewish person who's just culturally Jewish. You can be religiously Jewish and still be not Zionist. You can be like a liberation Jewish person. Going back to that religious anarchism, but maybe with different emphases on history and accountability and personal responsibility. I think those are really big in Judaism, whereas in Christianity you get mercy and grace. And in Islam, Muslim means one who submits. So I say one of the biggest emphases in Islam is submission to the will, power, and ultimate complexity, irreducibility, and incomprehensibility of God. So you submit to that. You submit to the incomprehensibility of God's power and God's plan. And I think in these Islamic cultures, you do see large-scale operations of organized labor to make beautiful artworks, beautiful cathedrals, beautiful mosques, beautiful tombs and temples. It was paid, it was wage labor, presumably. Some of it was enslaved. The Taj Mahal, for instance, I believe was enslaved labor. As much as we might want that as much as we might want that symbol of the grief for Shah Jahal's wife, which was the reason the Taj Mahal was built for like 22 years. I'm pretty sure it was enslaved, not employed. These are nice. The roof has like shingles on it. Maybe you can see that. Maybe my phone's charged. We'll check this stuff out. Take a quick break. So, yeah, phone's charged. We can charge something else with this cord. Probably need to charge the GoPro before too long. We don't want to run the video for too long so it doesn't overheat. It's already getting kind of warm, but that's fine. When I put it on the tripod, I'm going to run the external power so that it shouldn't overheat. It's the battery that makes it so hot. And I'm going to keep it out of the sun too. And hopefully like an angle like this with me sitting out there still is really great for you guys. So we'll do that. I think I'm going to use the big battery bank and a long cord. So there's no risk of it running out of power. And we'll see if we can get to like our normal lecture lengths. 55 minutes is what I want to stick to. So I'm going to lean on this thing. Maybe stretch my back. Okay. So yeah, and then if you're in the class, you've had 3 exams by this point, and we're just coming into, in Unit 4, we've also done some Mesoamerican and South American, Latin American religious philosophy or indigenous ways of thinking, looking at the Inca, the pre-Inca, some pictures, some notes from the museum that I visited in Peru and pictures from my travels there, some online articles. We also looked at African religions, and in general, Unit 4 is about decolonization, emancipation and liberation, anti-hierarchism, anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and all these things as it relates to a very large culture of religion and worldview, or worlding, or way of engaging the world through indigenous philosophy. And specifically for Cordova, she's giving us Apache philosophy, kind of generalized and taking things from other tribes and other, like, because again, it's not a direct translation, but it's similar. And we might say that it adumbrates the richness and the multiplicity of God, of being, of nature, etc. So I think, assuming that I don't get any power off issues, and I can check to make sure that we're still running with the cam, I probably want to, yep, we're still going. What, I can't see how long it's been. Anyway, I want to read the front matter, because it's kind of long, it's pretty good. We've also done Anzaldúa. I haven't recorded Anzaldúa yet, those lectures. I also haven't recorded the lectures for 2 and 3, but I've taught the class a few times. Plan to record the lectures for units 2 and 3, because they're kind of more like basic. They have slides. I'll do all that when I get back into my apartment, my home office. For now, though, and for the Anzaldúa, I want to do like a South Texas trip to where she's writing about, and do this same kind of in-person camping lectureship. But we would have covered some material from Anzaldúa by this point too, specifically about the Coatlicue states, la facultad, the ability to discern danger that comes, especially for women, through suffering and assault or traumatization, painfully earned, painfully developed as a resource or a skill. But as Anzaldúa says, she can let Coatlicue take over, and the serpents will rise up and kind of ring the alarm bells when something's actually wrong. She can trust her intuition to like chill for a while and pipe up when it's needed. She also writes, she tells the history of South Texas from the valley of the Rio Grande La Valle, I think is what they call it. The space between, I think it was San Antonio and Mexico City, which is a large chunk of Texas and a large chunk of Mexico. And it's supposed to be, that region is supposed to be more like itself and its own thing than like, than Mexico or than Texas. If you don't live in Texas, you may not know that Texas kind of has, like, it seems like it has all regions or all geography types except for like a tundra or an alpine region, or we sometimes get snow but not really, and we don't get enough snow anywhere in the state to go skiing, I don't think. We only have a few mountain ranges, so we really don't have too many mountains, but we have like the Big Bend, Guadalupe Mountains, the Davis Mountains. I think Fort Davis is there. And Central Texas, it's very hilly. In Northeast Texas, it's tall trees. In Southeast Texas, you have swamp and Gulf Coast weather. In deep South Texas, you have that arid border, sparse way of living. Lay down. Lay down. Go lay down. Get in bed. Come on. So I got our bed and our tent set up. It looks like it's gonna be cozy. It also looks like the air mattress might be losing air, but we'll be fine. Like I said, the electric kettle wasn't working, so we used the propane stove, made oats. I had enough for lunch, so I'm still chomping on those. I'm gonna get them down before long. Put peanut butter in them, it should be good. Anyway, so yeah, she tells the history from kind of a different perspective than what I was taught and when I took Texas history growing up, about like the Alamo and the War for Texas Independence and the War for Mexican Independence. The amusement park Six Flags is a reference to, there's actually one called Six Flags Over Texas, and that's because in Texas's history there were Six Flags that have flown over it, and I can't always rename them, but I can sometimes. The U.S. flag, obviously, like the United States of America. The Texas state flag, those are the obvious easy ones because they have them right now. The third one, though, is the Texas national flag, like the Republic of Texas flag, when it was its own nation for a decade or two, something like that. There's also the Mexican flag, that's number 4. There's the Spanish flag, it's number 5. And I guess there was the French flag, too. I can double check this real quick, I don't want to mislead anybody. Oh, no, not the French flag, the Confederate flag, which sucks. But that one's there too. But it has this really diverse topography, and anyway, we didn't get the history that Ansel Dewitt gives us. So you would have covered that in those lectures. I don't want to say much more about it now because obviously then we start doing those lectures. So, the way, I feel like there's a similar kind of structure where Cordova starts off the book with personal stories about her experiences. And in the second part, she's looking at worldviews and perspectives and languages. And once she's done that about experience and living, and about history and where we come from and what we're taught in the first part, and in the second part when she's discussed ways of seeing things, lenses, windows, new ways of thinking, old ways of thinking. There's a hummingbird. You guys catch that? Probably in 4K. Languages window, the philosophical questions. Then we can get to the questions. Unit 3 is what is the world? What unit 4? So like metaphysics and meta-ethics. 4, what is it to be human? Existentialism, and I guess there's still some like personal metaphysics or metaphysics of identity there. What is the nature of the self, or the constitution of the self? Is it constituted by a community? Is it constituted by a transcendental ego? No, probably not. Is it constituted by a world of experiences that we share with other worlds of experiences? Yeah, probably. And finally, 5, what is the proper role of the human in the world? So here's where we get to ethics proper, politics proper. We've gone through metaphysics, meta-ethics, metapolitics. Even with Windows, she's doing some epistemology, really, right? And with, I'd say with Bridges, she's doing I don't know, first philosophy probably is what I'd call that. Like starting from your own experiences, working with what you have, and going from there. So what I want to do is I want to read this front matter, and you should be able to see all that. But I want to read this front matter, and I actually want to read this thing from the very end, from part 5. That's only a page long, and then we'll read the front matter. And the reason I'm going to do this, it's this section, the second to last section before coda, living in a sacred universe. And you can see this isn't fully annotated yet, which is, you know, that's what it is. The first thing they say in the preface, so the front matter is a foreword by Linda Hogan, the editor's introduction, and then the author's introduction by Cordova, and then the biographical essay by somebody else again. So, I'm on my way home, Viola Cordova writes. I'm always on my way home. In many ways, this is her answer to the question raised in this section: what is the role of humans in the world? In this short dream sequence, which takes place in the mining town of Superior, Wyoming, Cordova shows how the particulars of a home, the dog barking and the rise of the hill, provide a deep-rooted sense of the comfort and certainties that come from belonging to a place. It is late at night. I am walking along alone in no hurry. Even in winter, when there are snowdrifts across the road and path, I am not uncomfortable. I am always on my way home from somewhere. Occasionally on my walk, I look behind me, up the road. I seem to look merely out of curiosity, as I am not expecting anyone, nor am I afraid of being alone. I look for approaching vehicles, and sometimes there are dim headlights far away. They apparently turn off the road and never pass me. After I have crossed the bridge on the curve of the path, I hear either a horse whinny or a dog bark. They make this sound only once, sort of as a last-minute greeting before settling down, perhaps an acknowledgement of my presence. After hearing their sound, I hesitate and look around. There are no people here, though I am aware of people sleeping in the house. They are not aware of me. The dog does not even mind that I am out and looking toward his house. He goes back to sleep. The road behind me stretches on endlessly, up a slight rise and far away. There are people at the end of that road. I have been there, and I seem to go there often, but when I leave there, I always walk home, alone. The only variation in the dream is the weather, and sometimes a dry gulch is full of water, and there are juniper trees along the bank. Otherwise, there is only sagebrush. The horse appears in the full water scene, whereas the dog appears in the snowy scene. At other times I hear or am aware of both of them being there. I meet no one, and there are no lights except the moonlight and the lights twinkling from home, which appear very comfortable. The dream ends with my knowing that I'm on my way home. In spring 2002, Viola Cordova drove... nope, still the wrong one. Foreword, Viola Cordova, Perspectives by Linda Hogan. I want to make sure that we're still recording. Looks good. Ever so rarely a rider comes along and, I am always on my way home. There is the breathing landscape, the wind. Every so often, ever so rarely, a rider comes along and says what others have not found words to say. Usually this writer is a poet and not a philosopher. And yet philosopher Viola Cordova writes like a poet. As an American Indian woman and thinker, I have long wished for a person who could bring to light in language the significance of indigenous knowledge and the cultural differences of our peoples. So eloquently as a tick, and brilliantly as Viola Cordova, an Apache philosopher. She has gone beyond Euro-Western philosophy into the heart of the indigenous knowledge system and philosophy, as far as the limits of English will allow. Because our histories, experiences, and ethical thought systems are different from those of Western thinkers she speaks about, the inner architecture of our thought is not easily understood. Cordova does so with an amazing knowledge of the significance of diversity, language, and world knowledge systems. And because notions of the sacred in Native communities have enough similarities, she is able to speak about these likenesses together in order to further the understanding of indigenous human beings for those who are newer arrivals to this continent. We dwell in different matrices in many areas. There is first the relationship with the earth that is the primary experience of tribal peoples whose theology is land-based. Christianity, upon which the Euro-American social structure has come to be based, has what Cordova calls an extraterrestrial God, and traditionally believes in a human elevation out of matter, out of nature, out of dumb matter, instead of consciousness being like an immanent property of like quantum mechanics or something. Much is missing in such a belief system, and she notes that it is also a belief system that requires unquestioned foundations of its own mindset. I study white people, Viola writes, and she has. As a philosophy major, she first learned only one kind of philosophy. It was, for a native thinker, a closed society that heard only its own voice. Her work here is a life's work that has tried to add more to these voices. Missing from those unquestioned regions of belief are stories of our environment and significant knowledge of the world around us. Our indigenous lives are deeply embedded in nature and place. Our views and understandings of the world are the result of centuries of observing nature and our place in it. These have remained in places for thousands of years. For Native peoples, our systems of knowledge are not about beliefs, but about ways of knowing and how we know through experience itself. It is not what is taught in books, not in ordinary classes, but what lies beneath all the new ideas. As for the European Americans, she states that they are, quote, a people without a sense of boundaries for themselves, have a lack of attachment to the land, and do not recognize the boundaries of others. They have forgotten, end quote, they have forgotten the niche they occupy in the stories accompanying that particular bounded place that Cordova calls a homeland. Without a sense of bounded space, there is no sacredness accorded to one's own space of place. One is not standing in the center of the universe looking out onto definite boundaries that define who and what one becomes. There are no sacred mountains, no deep knowledge of the land, the night sky and its own multiple astronomies. Clouds are so few out. I mean, that one looks like it might rain, actually. The rainfly should be fine, but we might need to get the solar panel up. I'm going to plug it back in just to make sure it's got a full charge before we have to put it away. Oof. Apparently the strap's falling off too, which we love. I have an idea for a better way to do the headband, but we'll have to see if it works. For right now, let's just plug this in. Okay. Hopefully we don't hit that rain. Chargers are working well. Turn that off so it's not drawing power. And it should fill faster now. It gives me an estimate of, yeah, how long it'll take to fill. So that's better. That's fully charged, so we'll put that on. And we'll take the charger off so it doesn't keep drawing power. So I consider all of this like relevant to the course, relevant to practical ways of living and being, experience, and it's not just bookish knowledge that we need to learn. One of the things Cordova writes about that's really interesting is she questions how indigenous peoples have been colonized, and there have been attempts to eradicate their language or their ability to use their language, and instead, somehow, despite this, the indigenous way of communicating and living or being still exists in the English language, although not perfectly, never perfectly. I mean, nothing ever exists perfectly in language. But she gives the example of like self-discipline, how she disciplined herself and thought she wasn't fit. She deserved some, not a punishment, but a timeout, basically. She didn't need to like abnegate herself or chastise herself necessarily. It's just kind of a simple matter of like, I'm grounded for a few weeks. And her daughter did the same thing one time with a car. When she misused the car, she was like, "Mom, I can't drive for 2 weeks." Her friends thought Mom had grounded her, Cordova had grounded her, and it was just the daughter's way of, I guess, holding herself accountable or feeling that there was some kind of sacredness or respect that was owed, that wasn't properly given to the thing that was failed at. Now, the main point here for us is that this was passed down to Cordova's daughter without Cordova, she says, like, without me ever having to say it. So that's one of Cordova's main interests. I really hope it doesn't rain. It says it might Monday. It doesn't look like we have any chance of rain right now. But, I mean, this also isn't the right location. So, I also don't know if this is getting the most sun that it could be getting. We're going to turn it down a little bit and see if we can get... So right now we're getting 74. Let's see if we can get more. Okay. And now we're getting 84. Yeah, 85. It can only do 100, so that's good. If I rotate it, I bet we'll get even more. That's probably the best spot. All right, this GoPro is still falling off my head. Assuming we're still live, which we should be, yeah. Although it's not really balanced. Cool. So let's grab the book and keep reading. Viola Cordova writes that the stories of all people need to be laid out. I'm going to check out Winchester. Yeah, he's fine. Need to be laid out on the table before one understands how to be fully human. We need to acknowledge the differences and their spectrum of human being, the significance of accepting all and not wishing for a monoculture. Diversity is a way of being, and the attempt to find an absolute is yet another part of the separate matrices. Tribal peoples do not require a sameness of thought or belief. We come from different stories, different origins, and we respect the differences. When the fact of human diversity takes second place to the notion of singularity, Cordova writes that this concept of singularity is a dangerous, pernicious concept that ends in misery and hunger. The idea of progress creates sacrificial hostages of the superficial beings who make the acme of the end being of that progress. Part of Cordova's interest in writing and speaking is because others are stealing our voices and telling our stories. Even when they speak with us, even when they interview, what comes out is an interpretation. It is about them, their thoughts. Usan, which might be considered the word for God for the Jicarilla Apache, or the Jicarilla Apache, means is. According to Viola Cordova, the mystery of understanding tribal concepts of being and goodness seems beyond the comprehension of Europeans who have tried to understand systems that seem to be too complex for them. The anthropologists and those studying tribal peoples too often write their own interpretation of what is said because they are unable to see the larger, to think beyond their own thinking, enough to come to what is really spoken, meant, and known about the world. For indigenous peoples, each place has its own intelligence, its own stories. We are not only creatures of this planet, but of very specific and fragile circumstances of this planet. We are herd animals. Humans are animals of the group. The physical space we all share may be the same, but the philosophical space isn't. Native Americans have survived all attempts of eradication and assimilation for a variety of reasons. The environment is sacred, it is storied, and we are not in a world layered with ideas. Viola Cordova looks at native knowledge systems and languages across the country, encompassing a history of continent-wide pain and the effects of European colonization and dominance, and bringing to words how all of our native systems derive from the heart of place. Even when we have been sent away from that place or have not learned our own languages, we still have it. From subtle gesture and learned ways of being, it is passed down to us. This is how it is. The knowledge is in the manner of being, even when the words are not spoken. Our philosophies come of being from a place and a community, of knowing a place and respecting its boundaries. In part, this is why we native peoples persist in our identities. There is cultural mooring and values having to do with the environment, the place, and the stories of that place. Language is significant also, but even without it, English-speaking natives see through windows of their old language because of cultural practice. From this, she derives her sense of humans and their place in the world, knowing the workings of that place in the world, her notions of bounded space, the territory that is tribal, and the human participation in that space while respecting the boundaries of others. It looks greener now that the sun's up higher. Language is the bonding mechanism, she writes, and empathy is the cause. There are different interpretations of the world, universe, and human thought among various tribes, and we each respect that of the other, their creations, their stories of the land. The languages embody concepts that have survived the loss of the language. You do not have to be fluent. The view of the world survives all attempts to eradicate the understanding. Behind the language is a pattern, system, a way of being. It is implicit. After all the occupation, Viola makes clear, we are not assimilated. We live daily with an understanding of our differences with two or even more processes. taking place at the same time, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. In addition, we know these differences. Quote, "We are bombarded every time we leave home. And it is true. We walk into another layer over our world and have to comprehend it, work within it as well as within our own." She defines what it is to live in more than one world understanding. Lugones kind of talks about this as well, and Enz will do it too. Still, she asks the important question of how to be fully human in this magnificent world. The questions she asks are ones I think of constantly. What is a human? How should a human be a whole person? What is our role here? What is the earth? Most of us think of the earth as a living being, and that we must live upon it with care and love and respect. The idea of subjugating the earth is the product of another mind. Even environmentalists, she maintains, are of another mind because they are not concerned so much with the sacred as with the idea of stewardship. Just gonna grab Winchester in case there's any commotion. The dog ran up earlier, so he needs to be on a leash. In her system of knowledge, there are no native correlates to the terms soul or God. The things we seek are balance and harmony. There is an assumption that the contemporary Indian is not, quote, original, not real, the same form as those people of the past, but she maintains this is not true. Even today, we focus on diversity as part of Earth's creativity, while Euro-Americans still search for the universal, an absolute, something that can be understood, spoken, be assimilated into their own system of knowledge. The native understands the world as more complex and not the static that is implicit in an absolute, where all communication remains within a narrow circle of like-minded. One group emphasizes the individual as part of the whole. The Euro emphasizes the individual. There is we and there is I. What defines this? There is a given upon which everything else hinges. Viola says that troubles began when the Europeans found that the Indians did not share their sense of land, and they had no consciousness of what other life forms they were and are disturbing. They were, essentially, unaware of living things. Yet community lies beyond family, within the surrounding, enfolding environment. We are co-creators in the universe, the world, within all the rest, all fluid shifting movement, and without the emphasis on measurement. The world is there in its entirety, not in segments, and we inhabit it. This is what makes us human. There are juniper trees by the bank, or perhaps a horse. So we're losing sunlight on the solar panel, and it might be worth just moving it anyway. It also might be worth swapping the battery out in case it gets too hot at this point. Yeah, we're drawing 35 watts now. We're also not using as much anymore. The GoPro batteries are still charging. External power bank still charging. The watch and the phone are charged. So this cool little adapter. Alright, so one battery's done. So, I don't see any rain over there. I think it'll just pass by without it actually raining. And check to make sure GoPro's still going. Still going. Wish I could see how long it's been going. But anyway. If I have to jump up and move the solar panel, I will. I'm gonna sit back down and keep reading. Come on. Oh, I'm worried if I sit that you guys won't be able to see the valley as beautifully. I could come closer too. Like Sermon on the Mount vibes. Okay. This is the editor's introduction. This is less about Viola's or Cordova's project or her research and her work relating Western philosophy to indigenous philosophy. It's less about that, and it's more about the circumstances surrounding her life and her passing, and why the decision was made to collect her work and what the process of going about that looked like, which is always important to disclose out of respect and transparency. When we get to the third section, which Cordova wrote herself, called, and how it is actually starts after this one. So the biography is part of the book, interestingly enough. Biographical essay by someone else, I think. Kurt Peters. Probably someone who knew her. Okay. Itchy forehead. It's all barren over there. I'm excited to see what the lake is like. I think it's gonna be colorful but flat. It's nice and windy. Really might need those dead cats. So in spring 2002, Viola Cordova drove to Corvallis to speak to our Native American philosophies class at Oregon State University. She could have flown and saved herself a lot of time. Corvallis is a long way from Pocatello, Idaho, but she wanted to make a trip of it to see the mountains before winter closed in, the Bitterroots, the Blues, the Cascades, to move west along the course of the rivers. Like we're doing, make a trip of it. This would not be her first visit to Corvallis. Some time ago, she was a professor here in the Philosophy and Ethnic Studies departments. A challenging, chain-smoking, idea and laughter-driven professor. Students gathered around her the way elk come to hay in the winter, half-starved for ideas that can sustain them. A Jicarilla Apache / Hispanic woman with a PhD in classical Western philosophy, Viola empowered our students to ask hard questions of the culture she called Euromans, and gave them a vision of a different way to see and act in the world. We wanted her to stay, but she never stayed in a university more than 3 years, Viola told us, because that's when the professor begins to be slowly poisoned by the artificial accolades and driven by the arcane rules of academic life, publishing just to publish, teaching just to teach. She returned to her family in Denver and a new job in Idaho, leaving us with a renewed challenge to tell the truth and a watercolor painting of a hillside north of town. In her lecture, Dr. Cordova, Viola, spoke to the students about the past and the future. There was a big crowd, probably 200 people in the audience. OSU students, Oregon State University, and townfolk and students from the tribal school. The past is real and present, she told us, held, in our memories and in the shape of the world. It is the ground of our being, its actuality, its particular substance. The future doesn't exist. We must create the future by our decisions, our actions, and inactions. Together with the place we live, we are co-creators of the world, bringing it into existence moment by moment. So we're co-creators with each other, but we're also co-creators with the specific place we live, as she says. Meaning the world itself, the environments, the living environments, the non-living environments, the motion, the force, all of these, organic life wouldn't have occurred if, until after the long processes, the long material processes, which allowed for star stabilization, planet formation, galaxy formation, and if those forces weren't set in motion in the right way, life would not have began, right? So we kind of have to rethink. It's getting windy without that sun. We kind of have to rethink the beginning of organic life, and maybe say that's different from the development of inorganic life. So whether we use the awareness of the importance of those very basic ideas to change ourselves or to maintain our views may be of secondary importance. What is important is that the Native American recover his own voice in such matters. It should be we who explain our beliefs rather than having them explained for us and to us. In her written work, as in her teaching, Viola explains her beliefs in a clear, informed, insightful, and eloquent voice. What she offers us is a carefully considered and beautifully expressed Native American philosophy of life, an explanation of, quote, how it is. It is an extraordinary gift and an invaluable addition to the record of human wisdom. Viola left many unpublished papers, talks, poems, drawings, booklets, and essays, many of them unfinished, most of them undated, and perhaps several chapters of what might have become a book. Our first effort was to assemble them. Amber Lacy, a philosophy graduate student, undertook this assignment as a labor of love for a professor who had befriended her. From archives at the Center for Southwest Research at the University of New Mexico, and from the papers Danny sent to Oregon State, Amber searched out all the materials available and arranged them in the order Viola had herself indirectly suggested. These are the questions we ought to be asking ourselves, Viola wrote. 1. What is the world? 2. What is a human being? And 3. What is the role of a human being in the world? So these became the ordering questions of the book. And like I said, they start with experience or first philosophy or history or embodied experience in the first chapter or in the first part. And in the second part, they cover Cordova. They've arranged it to present Cordova's covering or coverage or writings on or explorations of language, epistemology, and these other sort of metaphysical questions that we have to ask in order to understand how we can know things in the first place. So these became the ordering questions of this book. Our second effort was to create from Viola's work one whole and singular thing, a book. This forced us to make guesses as to how Viola might have combined essays on the same subject, arranged essays in relation to one another, what she might have included and what she might have left out. We can't claim to have done what she would have done, but in all our decisions we have tried to intrude as little as possible, and always to be respectfully attentive to Viola's vision and intelligence. The result is something this world has not seen before. From a person who grew up nourished by Apache wisdom and worldviews, a powerful critique of European Christian thought. From a person trained as a scholar of European thought in the analytic and classical traditions of an American PhD program, a brilliant statement of a Native American's philosophy. From a woman writer who knows firsthand what it means to be excluded and embraced, a moving, life-changing account of what she most deeply believes is true. This book is composed of 5 sections. In the first, Bridges, Dr. Cordova tells stories about her family and her own life as a girl, moving back and forth between cultures, between towns, between her parents' differences. Bridges can divide, her stories teach, as well as unite. The second section, Windows, provides background for the study of Native American philosophy that will follow. We all see through windows that shape what we see, hiding some things from view, forcing others into a distorted shape. Our language, our stories, our assumptions, and cultural practices, beliefs we hold so deeply we don't even know they are there. All these determine how we understand the world. It is important to be aware of the differences in the windows through which we peer at others, and to acknowledge, honor, and celebrate a variety of outlooks. In the third section, Dr. Cordova begins to develop a systematic philosophical view, asking the basic metaphysical question, Winchester, what are you eating? Asking the basic metaphysical question, what is the world? How did the world begin? Of what is it made? What is the nature of time, of space? What is real? And are there many realities or only one? Within this world, the fourth section and the second question, what is it to be human? This is the primary question of the fourth section, in which Dr. Cordova engages questions of personal identity and the place of the human being in a complex, interconnecting world. She is particularly concerned with the question of how people might reclaim the power to define themselves and thus regain the right to shape their own lives. I'm going to double check the recording's still live. Cool, we haven't overheated or anything. The last of her central philosophical questions, what is the role of a human in the world? Making sure we still got power, yep. Is the subject of the 5th section. What is the role of the human in the world? Of a human in the world? Humans are of a place, born in desert or forest, raised in city or farmland, or at the edge of the sea. I was born and raised on the Gulf, right? I feel something about me loves crawfish and seafood a lot. I also love Tex-Mex because I was from Southeast Texas, so. This is a fact of profound importance that shapes not only who we are, but how we ought to act in relation to the place and to others who live and will live and have lived in that place. The book ends with a coda in which Dr. Cordova addresses perhaps the hardest question of all, how then shall I live? Her answer is simple and complex, beautiful and burdensome. The greatest duty, if it can be so called, of a human being is to cause no disruption to the greater and beautiful whole of what it is that is. We hope that people will read this book in courses on Native American philosophies or worldviews. Here, of all places, it is a matter of moral and intellectual integrity that students hear a Native American's own voice explaining Native American beliefs. We hope people will read the book in courses on American or European philosophy. There, the book will offer a perspective that will change forever how they see Western culture. We hope people will read the book in courses on the history of ideas. Here they will find important ideas too long excluded from academic discourse. We hope people will read it in environmental ethics courses. It will offer them a powerful vision of how to live in a place with respect and reciprocity. But most important, we hope all people, in and out of the academy, will read this book whenever they find themselves asking the most important questions. How is it, this beautiful, mysterious, powerful, and vulnerable world? Who am I in this world? And how shall I then live? Katie M., Corvallis, Oregon. So that's presumably Kathleen Dean Moore, which is one of the editors. The other editors are Kurt Peters, Tej Jojola, and Amber Lacy. Kurt Peters was the one who wrote the biographical essay. And Linda Hogan is not one of the editors, but she wrote the foreword. It was compiled. They said who compiled it. I think I skipped this on accident in the editor's introduction. So there is no escaping responsibility. Whether the world is beautiful and true, or ugly and degrading, hurtful or grieving, depends on us. Viola paused, picked up a piece of chalk, and drew a picture of a pond rimmed with cattails. Your life is a pebble thrown in a pond, she told the students, and drew concentric rings, spreading from the splash, a small stone raised on the water. And not just the pebble, your life is the pebble and the water and the energy that moves the waves and the movement of the waves themselves. She drew an arrow to show how waves rock the cattails and ripple the sand. The students listened intently, leaning forward in their seats. They knew the magnitude of the gift of self-respect and wisdom she was giving them. She answered questions, turned away from the applause, went to dinner with students but ate only dessert, laughed with them and challenged them, and then she was gone. A week later, I learned from her husband that she had passed away. It was a terrible thing to stand in front of those students the next class meeting and tell them she had passed. I remember gripping the lectern to keep from trembling. I remember a loud cry that went up from the students. I remember their silence as they tried to understand. But how can anyone understand this? An embolism bursting in that magnificent brain. Waves rocking the reeds. Carving scallops on the sand, a spreading stillness. Viola's companion, Denny, sent boxes of books from her library. Wittgenstein and Ortega y Gasset, Orwell, Deloria, and a computer disk filled with Viola's papers. He also sent a note saying, "Do what you can. This book is what we can do." From the beginning, our goal was to publish Viola's words as she had written them. She herself issued the challenge. Native Americans today have survived almost 500 years of forced assimilation into the larger and dominant culture in the United States. There are apparently some deeply embedded ideas that we teach to our children in some unconscious manner that defy assimilative attempts. Our identities are tied in with those ideas, and it is important that we explore them. Whether we use the awareness of the importance of those very basic ideas to change ourselves or to maintain our views may be of secondary importance. What is important is that the Native American recover his own voice in such matters. It should be we who explain our beliefs rather than having them explained for us and to us. So sorry for skipping that part. I think I got distracted and yeah. We're going to wrap the video here, guys. I'm going to check on a few things and come back with more very briefly. And hopefully this cloud passes without rain. So, it's windy and cold. Okay.